guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 60. Here with my always brilliant and beautiful co-host, the Fight Geek. Obviously, the situation is very, very different from what it was last time we recorded 2 weeks ago. So Fight Geek, let me just start off with a serious question of how you're doing, and I do mean that sincerely.
Doing great, man. Just kind of hunkering down, trying to make the best out of a bad situation. Glad to be back, talking with you and answering some questions for our listeners and giving them a platform and giving us something to talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And on the subject of our listeners, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. We know that we took a very rare 1 week break last week, and it couldn't have come at sort of a crazier time. It now feels like we haven't had an episode in 3 years. But rest assured that me and Fight Geek are going nowhere. We are more committed than ever to doing this show on a weekly basis to talk MMA with you guys. We're going to get through this together. And here's a really quick breakdown of what we've got on tap for this unique episode today. First, we are going to start off with my weekly opening question for Fight Geek. After that, we're going to cover some news and headlines. And then my favorite section, listener questions and more. So here's my question for you, Fight Geek. The fate of UFC 249 remains unknown. It's been the topic of discussion for the last 2 weeks. I've got a two-part question for you. One, will we see the Tony versus Khabib fight happen as scheduled on April 18th? And second, should it happen as scheduled on April 18th, knowing what we know now, that the location that Dana has planned is indeed Florida rather than what we previously thought may be an exotic country?
Okay, lots to unpack there, but will just go ahead and say that I have a hard time believing that fight's going to take place on the 18th. That's just barely over 3 weeks away. I just think there's too many unknowns and too many variables, but with what's going on in the world right now, we don't know what it's going to look like in 3 weeks. We don't know if the situation will be better or worse. So I do not think that fight is going to be taking place on the 18th, and I do not think that fight should be taking place on the 18th as of now. Do I want to see that fight as bad as anyone? Absolutely. But I think, forcing the issue here and kind of going against the grain when the rest of the world is kind of taking the appropriate measures, and it just doesn't seem like the time to force that fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, because you gave that answer, let me just play devil's advocate. And for the record, I do agree with you, Fight Geek. But for the record, okay, I agree. As devil's advocate, here's what I'm saying. What is to stop the UFC from responsibly doing this, following the president's advice of no more than 10 people in a room? You've got the two fighters. You can do the judging remotely. I believe Ben Askren had a tweet on this the other day. You can have the 3 judges remote. You can have the ref in there. You can have 2 cornermen.
I got to interrupt you. I don't think we can have remote judges for the most important lightweight fight in the history of the sport.
Okay.
Imagine that going to a decision and having a controversial winner with remote judges. That sounds like an absolute horrible way to determine who's the greatest lightweight of all time.
Well, that's fair enough. Okay, so then let's modify this. I think that you can easily put in 3 judges, the 2 fighters, that's 5. You've got at least 2 cameramen, 6, 7, 1 cornerman, another cornerman, the ref.
Yeah, I mean, is it feasible to make it probably happen? Sure, but again,
what if everyone's been tested for corona to make this responsible as well?
The issue is that, they're potentially taking a fight like Tony and Khabib, which is going to be a huge pay-per-view fight. The ticket sales aren't going to be there. So you're taking something that was going to be basically like a Super Bowl type event, and you're not going to be making any money on it. So what is the point of rushing it at this point? They're not going to have a stacked undercard. Do you think they're going to be able to keep the undercard completely together, or are they just going to put on one fight?
I mean, Dana White claims it will be a full card. If we're going by what Dana White is saying right now.
Well, then it's impossible to do it with less than 10 people in the room because there's going to be more than 10 teammates or 10 team personnel for a card. I think each fighter has up to 3 people in their corner, so that's 13 fights times, 26 fighters times 3. You're talking about 80 people just on the card performing.
I want to be very clear that I am not defending Dana's idea of keeping this going, but again, playing devil's advocate, Fight Geek, what if you're able to keep these teams separated by so much as, half a mile at a time?
But what does it benefit the UFC to force feed us this
Because
fight
people will watch, and it might be something that during this
will
trying
watch?
time, people will be uplifted by getting to watch this giant fight.
Obviously, we're all going to watch it. That's not the question. But the question is with all this going on in the world, are the fighters on the fight card going to be able to be at their best? For me, the most important thing is that I see Tony versus Khabib at their best. I don't care if it's, I don't care about all the surrounding. I wanted to see the competition. Now, I don't know. Kind of at a loss.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I also think that I was shocked to hear Dana White after, days of saying, yesterday he went on and said, we know 99.9% where it is. I'm not going to give you the location. People were saying Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Russia. Then today he came out and said Florida. If it's really, if his real plan so far is truly Florida, very hard to see how this fight is going to happen in a month.
We don't know.
Folks.
We don't know what will be happening in Florida on Monday. So
Correct.
That's very
correct.
optimistic to assume that things are going to stay or improve in Florida specifically.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and we're going to see. Okay, so let's move on to news and headlines. So, news and headlines. Jorge Masvidal has been very talkative lately, and he has been calling out basically no one except for McGregor, shooting down Colby Covington fight. He's, now seems to have kind of gone away from Usman. He's talking about fighting Khabib Nurmagomedov at 155. If Conor's not on the table, he's saying, this is what I would need to get back to 155. Is Jorge Masvidal ducking Kamaru Usman?
Ducking, no. But I think he's obviously at a stage in his career where he's looking to maximize what he can do pay-wise. And so he's going to need big names. Jorge's kind of, in my opinion, reached that almost Nate Diaz level celebrity fighter where he's probably not ever going to be a champion, but he will be, one of the top draws, one of the more popular guys on the roster. So I think it's important to match him up in exciting, fun fights. So no, I don't think he's ducking him. I just think he's, realizing as a 45-plus fight veteran that at this point, to get out of the bed and really make the kind of money he wants, he's looking at guys like Khabib and Conor and the Nates and people like that. Kamaru Usman, even though he is the belt holder, doesn't move many people to order pay-per-views.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What I would push back with is this. Nate Diaz had already, failed, gotten a title fight, and obviously failed to win it, right?
Right. I'm just talking about as far as their persona. Nate Diaz, his profile is much larger than, someone with, let's say, his record, just because of kind of how, he's a cold hero type figure, same as Jorge Masvidal. So I just think there's that aspect to him. I don't think they're similar as far as like their careers. I'm just saying as far as their profile.
No, and I totally agree. What I'm saying is, don't you find it very odd that Jorge Masvidal, at the point that he's at, is openly almost trying to resist, in my opinion at least, having a title fight to win the belt, to win the championship? I don't know if I've seen that before.
I think if you really are weighing that, and if you're just being honest, I think Jorge Masvidal, deep down in his heart, realized he can probably beat Conor McGregor much easier than he can beat Kamaru Usman. And at this point, he needs to win. What's it going to be? What's it do for him to go up and put up a good fight and get, out wrestled by Usman and lose? That does nothing for his brand. But if he were to go and fight McGregor in a super fight and win somehow, his profile would be 10 times as big as Kamaru Usman's.
Okay. Very fair. So moving on, we're going to touch back real quick on UFC Brasilia, since we never had a chance. Obviously, Charles do Bronx Oliveira had a huge win at lightweight against Kevin Lee. I thought he looked absolutely phenomenal. He reminds me a lot of a Tony Ferguson type, in my opinion. I've never seen someone improve so dramatically over the last few years.
Especially with his hands. I mean,
exactly. Took the words out of my mouth.
His hands, he looks so confident. He started so young and got a lot of world-class experience in the UFC as a very young fighter. So now you're kind of seeing that later development. And, I mean, he has the jiu-jitsu, obviously, the all-time leader in, submission wins in the UFC. But he has a good overall athleticism, and his striking has continued to develop. And, two guys that have really kind of been a focal point of their careers, Lee and Oliveira, developing their striking. I think you saw how much further along DeBronx is than Kevin Lee, because Kevin Lee did not look good on the feet, in my opinion, versus him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. I think that Kevin was getting tagged on the feet left, right, and sideways against Charles. Again, I mean, you really touched on it. His striking has improved exponentially. I remember Oliveira from years ago, and he was just this jiu-jitsu guy who quit when the going got tough. And it's like he's a different guy. Yeah, he had a couple
bizarre finishes. I think, didn't he break his collarbone in one of the fights? He's had a couple strange, bizarre fights. But like I said, he's been fighting for so long, and he started so young that, I think you saw some of his growing pains. But I am wholeheartedly ready to call him the most underrated fighter on the UFC roster, bar none at this point.
I completely agree, and that leads me directly to my question. So I've been looking at the UFC rankings, as I love to do when I'm bored, and I say that DeBronx beats all but the top 5 lightweights relatively easily, all but the top 5. How far is this kid going to go, and do you disagree with my comment?
I don't know if he beats them easily. I see tough fights at this point with
Felder, Hooker.
Hooker.
They're losing. They're losing.
I think those are close fights. But yeah, I would favor him there. But yeah, I mean, he has broken into that, Dustin Poirier level, in my opinion.
Yeah, and by the way, it's worth saying I'm well aware that Felder and Oliveira have fought before, and Felder won. Felder got the better of him.
Right. That's true, but you have to view it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape. He's gotten a lot better. Felder's gotten a lot better since then. No two fights are the same. So, yeah, he does have a win versus him, but I don't know how I would feel in the rematch. Like I said, Oliveira was showing so much confidence in the ring. He was marching forward, hands fairly low, throwing lead uppercuts. And, I mean, I like Kevin Lee. He has more support than almost any fighter I've ever seen. Everybody wants to make an excuse for this guy every single time he misses weight.
Hey, easy.
Every single time.
Corona is the reason.
Oh, yeah. He never gassed before, right? I mean, this was
he went on a trail with his grandma the night before.
By Charles Oliveira, something bad, dude. I mean, from that beginning of that fight, you could almost see Oliveira was so confident he was just going to drag him into deep water and get him in trouble, and that's exactly what happened. I think I scored that fight. What was I scoring that fight? That was a 4th-round finish. It seems like
third round
finish. So I think I actually had Oliveira winning all 3 rounds, personally.
Yeah, no, I absolutely did too.
Because I had some people trying to defend Kevin Lee's performance in that fight, and I thought Kevin Lee got smacked up, walked down, and choked out.
Okay, is this about... Are we going to go down... You know how I feel about Kevin Lee, and I do not like the Kevin Lee slander. No. He's been fighting killer after killer after killer after killer.
Yeah, and every time he gets in there with a killer, he gets killed.
Oh, yeah? Gregor Gillespie, supposedly the guy who's going to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov, gets decapitated.
Okay, Kevin Lee's a one-hit wonder, and that one hit's going to be Gregor Gillespie. Congratulations.
Oh, please. Stop it. Oh, yeah? He beat Edson Barboza when Barboza was a huge deal.
And that is his most impressive performance, but he didn't even look like he was on the same level of lightweight as Charles Oliveira.
I agree. So, gun to your head, how far does Charles Oliveira go? Is he going to be a future champ? I think he could be. I think he could be a future champ, Fight Geek.
Off the top of my head, what's his age? Is he still like 30, 31?
I believe that's around exactly his age, but let me just double check.
I think, if Khabib retires in the next few years, Tony's going to be 38 soon. He could have one of these.
He's 30. He's 30.
So, I mean, is it possible? I don't think he can beat the current top 3 today, but those guys are all aging. Khabib has said he doesn't want to stay around forever. So maybe in 3 or 4 years, Charles Oliveira is the type of guy who is at the top of that division.
Oh, Khabib. I mean, listen. Khabib has made it at least clear in my opinion, that he's on very much his last few fights. I believe I think he's trying to get to 30-0. He could be done in 2 fights easy.
Exactly.
Easy.
And then Conor to me feels like, he's more interested in fighting at 170, so that eliminates him. So without some real new fresh blood, you're talking about Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, maybe, Max Holloway comes up, some people like that.
Ferguson, obviously, until...
Well, Ferguson's 37.
Yeah, but until we see... Well, I guess I'll have to see the drop before...
I love Tony Ferguson as much as the next guy, but it would be really insane for him to be able to keep up the style of fighting that he, currently does as a 40-year-old fighter. So we'll have to see.
Okay, so it sounds like you're not willing to go as far as me. Guys, you heard it from me first. I'm saying Charles Oliveira is going to be a champ. He's going to be lightweight champ of the world.
It's the same guy that has been saying that Kevin Lee is going to be a champ too.
Oh, relax. Hey, you know what? Okay, laugh now. Kevin, that is so mean, by the way. I can talk.
Kevin Lee lost to Ali Quinta twice. Come on.
Everyone, yeah, and 2 years ago, people were saying Ali Quinta was, the second coming of GSP. Oh, he forced Khabib to his limit. He forced Khabib to his limit, and oh my gosh.
No, he didn't. He got 50-40 for it by Khabib.
Yes,
but
that's
okay,
correct.
let's keep it moving.
Okay, so here we go.
By the way, I went 10-1 on that card. Just wanted to remind you.
I think I did pretty well too, but I couldn't even tell you exactly how I did.
You didn't go 10-1. I know that.
Okay, all right. You see, this guy's always bragging when he gets like the 10-1s. But then if he's getting, the 4 and 6s, it's all silent and I let it go.
4 and 6?
Oh, you've gone 4 and 6 before. No? I don't have direct evidence.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I don't recall. Are we going to go over any more of that fight card or what?
Final news and headlines. No, wait. Final news and headlines before we're jumping into listener questions. I wasn't planning. Was there anything else you wanted to discuss about that fight card? It's been a while.
Well, let's just call out. There was some good, exciting stuff. So Gilbert Burns, big knockout of Damian Maia. I thought that was impressive. He's been barking at Tyron Woodley. There's been a lot that's went on.
Yeah.
Keep it moving. Renato Moicano looked amazing at 155 pounds. Definitely an interesting player in my opinion.
People have heard all this on other shows. The problem is we're late, so I don't want to go back and go through.
Anyways, Brandon Moreno won another big fight.
Moreno won a big one.
Happy about that.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go.
Final question before we go to listener questions and more. If Khabib beats Tony Ferguson and only wants one more fight to surpass the lightweight title defense, the consecutive lightweight title defense record of 3, and that would get him to 30-0. Who should it be against?
Well, that depends. We got to see how things shake out. It could be Justin Gaethje. It could be. Do we know? Is it Dustin Poirier going to fight Dan Hooker for sure?
I think that's being put on very much on hold.
Okay.
But let's assume, for the sake of argument, that Conor McGregor and Justin Gaethje do not fight, and Dustin Poirier and Dan Hooker do not fight due to, Corona and the circumstances.
So who should get the next title shot with nobody fighting?
Yep.
At that point, you're going to have to side with Conor McGregor just because of the name value. Khabib's not going to fight anybody. Khabib isn't going to fight Conor. That's what he keeps saying. So I don't know. That's a mess. If nobody fights, it's really impossible. I don't know.
Okay, so you think McGregor is more deserving than Gaethje for...
Not more deserving, but more realistic, for sure.
Okay, very fair. Very fair. Okay, all right, very fair.
The longer Gaethje stays inactive, in my opinion, the less deserving he is, if that sounds...
Well, I'm hearing... So, for the record, or I was hearing, I should say. I'm not hearing it anymore, of course. I was very much hearing all up until about 7 days ago when the shit really hit the fan with the Corona, that Conor and Justin were getting very, very close to a deal to fight. Now, this fight... I had heard was going to be at 170. Don't get me started. I'm not trying to go down that and talk about...
That makes no sense for Justin other than the fact that he just wants to fight Conor.
Well, of course it makes no sense for Justin. It's Conor taking obvious advantage of, his opponent. He doesn't want to fight him, at 55 depleted. He wants to fight him with this advantage. But anyways, I don't want to get into that now. This isn't the time or place. So I agree with you, by the way.
Really? I don't understand. That's a true super fight in my opinion. And Justin Gaethje's never fought at 170 in his life.
I understand. I know. That's why it's so crazy. But McGregor doesn't want to fight him at 55. So what do you do?
It is 155. They're just not cutting weight, remember?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. But no, and by the way, if anyone is questioning this, why is Phil saying this? Conor never officially said it's at 170. Well, his coaches have, as recently as a week ago, Owen Roddy said this needs to happen at 170. McGregor versus Gaethje should happen at 170. So his coaches are calling for it.
Makes no sense. But let's keep it moving.
All right. We're going to take a really quick break, folks, and then we'll be back with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude here with my always brilliant co-host, The Fight Geek. We are back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 60, and it is now time for my favorite section, Listener Questions! All right. No applause this time from Fight Geek. That's oh no, it's too late now. You've ruined it.
Your time's all up, Phil.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we're going to start off with some audio questions. So this is from our good friend Ali Ra. That's at Leg Sweep MMA. Give him a follow. I believe he's taking a small break from Twitter, which I completely understand. But once he comes back, make sure to give him a follow. Ali is the man. That's at Leg Sweep MMA. And here's his question.
Yo, what up, Phil? What up, Fight Geek? How you guys doing? It's Ollie Ra here. Now, do you think the UFC should have some sort of unwritten rule that all title eliminator fights are 5-round main events? And also on top of that, do you think all 5-round main events, the fighters should have to make championship weight? Keep up the good work, guys. Fucking looking forward to this podcast every week. You guys just keep getting better and better. Fucking keep it up.
Thank you, Ali. And Fight Geek, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Appreciate the kind words. In a perfect world, yes. But no, I don't necessarily agree. Do you?
I think that should title eliminators have to be 5-round main events? I think absolutely Ali is 100% correct. Now, the one thing that I disagreed with is I don't think they should have to make championship weight.
See, I kind of disagree there. I don't think that the number one contender matches always have to be the 5-round main event.
Well, why not? Let me ask you why not. What's your problem with it?
Because the prestige of a 5-round fight is kind of like a I guess it is a main event. As long as it's a main event, yeah, sure, it's 5. But, a 5-round fighter is a championship level fighter. That's always kind of been like the association for me. So training and fighting in 5-round fights means that you've made it to the championship level. So I feel like, making all of those 5 rounds just may be a little premature. That's just kind of my thinking.
Wow, you must be a very, very close friend of Zabit Magomedsharipov, because he is the only fighter in UFC history to refuse to do a 5-round main event fight. He is the first and only one against Calvin Kattar.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, no, because a lot of people put Zabit above people like Korean Zombie in the rankings, which I find absolutely hysterical. Zabit can't even go 2 rounds, let alone 5. So, I'm just saying, I think that...
But that's why...
So what's your argument? What is your argument exactly on why they shouldn't have to be 5-round main events? I'm confused.
Well, no, if it's a main event, obviously, not all number one contender matches are the main events, correct?
Right, but they should start becoming them. For example, Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris, no offense to either of them, that was ridiculous being a main event. I mean, ridiculous. I mean, I can't think of anything less relevant, like less exciting to be a main event.
But you have to understand, like, the other aspects of building a card. So, for instance, Alistair Overeem is one of the highest paid fighters on the card. So he's going to have to be that main event guy unless he's on a giant card. So the only time you're going to see guys like that lower is if they're on super cards because of how much each card costs. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody makes main event money.
I mean, Alistair Overeem, don't get me started, but he has not been on much of a winning streak. So
that's not how you determine your worth. It depends. With free agency, Alistair Overeem came over as an unreal commodity. He signed a huge contract.
I'm well aware of all of that.
Well, that's how it works. So they're not going to put a guy who makes $400,000 on the prelims. So he has to be slotted in a main or a co-main to make it make sense for the card.
So in your argument, Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris should be a main event over a potential McGregor-Gaethje title eliminator.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that's why I think they do that as a business model. That's not what I agree with. I personally agree with whatever the biggest fanfare is should be the main event.
Okay, in short, I agree with Ollie though. I think that absolutely title eliminators should have to be 5 rounds. You don't think so, right?
No, because I like I said, I don't think they have to be. We've seen fights like, wasn't Rory McDonald versus Robbie Lawler won a title eliminator? That fight was amazing in 3 rounds. So we've seen a lot of 3-round title eliminators that were awesome fights.
Well, here's another reason I would argue, just really quickly, because it was such a great question, Ollie.
Because rounds 4 and 5 are no longer championship rounds if they're also the contender rounds, right?
So then you don't even want 5-round main events. I mean, we could go down quite a road here. Are you calling for the end of 5-round main events, which is one of my biggest, the thing I love the most about changing in the UFC in the last 5 years?
No, I wouldn't say that. I love the 5-round main events also. I just think there should be a distinction.
Okay, but just, again, playing devil's advocate, someone like Zabit is able to use the system and maneuver the system so that he doesn't have to prove that he can go 5 rounds with his little trickery. So now people are saying Zabit deserves a title shot. Guys, Zabit can't even go 3 rounds.
Gosh, you're a blowhard, dude. Ollie didn't even ask about Zabit.
But I'm using him as a relevant example, Fight Geek.
Okay, I lost interest. Next question. Sorry, Ollie.
Okay, so you surrender then? All right. I just wasn't following you because I'm saying...
you just take every chance to bash your least favorite fighters and just go on some tangent, whatever.
Okay,
fine.
so
Zabit,
you think...
blah, blah, blah.
All right. Zabit should not get a title fight without a 5-round fight. I don't know why that's so bad.
I don't necessarily agree with that. He doesn't have to have a 5-round fight to get a title shot. I do not agree with that.
Okay, see? This is where we disagree. Fair enough.
Well, you got anything else to say about Zabit before we move on?
Just that I don't really think much of him, obviously.
Do you think he deserves a title shot?
Right now? Of course. Oh, shut up. I almost answered that. I was about to
All right, let's go.
All right. This next one is from Jim Asoon. Guys, Jim is the absolute man. That is at Jim Asoon1. Follow him. He's the man. Here's his question.
What's going on, you bunch of fucking casuals? Phil, Fight Geek. How's it going there, gentlemen? Alright. Crazy fucking time, so I don't know what kind of question to ask you, I guess. I don't know if I've asked you this before, but I'm going to ask it now. What are your thoughts of Khabib Tony happening? I don't see it happening until September, October maybe, but, you know, because how do you get into that Ramadan thing too, you know what I mean? Like, they can't walk there, you know? But anyways, that's another story. Crazy fucking times, gents. Crazy, crazy times. Anybody out there working still, thank you for all your work. Especially people in the stores and everything. You know, we talk about the medical workers, how people working in the store still. You know what I mean? They're right there at the restaurants, fucking Tim Hortons, whatever, you know what I mean? I know it's only takeout, but even the fucking delivery guys, you know what I mean? Just want to thank all those people, not you maggots who are trying to price gouge and you go fuck yourself, you people. You already know my rant on that. We're gonna boycott those motherfuckers in a heartbeat. So whoever sees that shit, you make sure you post that out there and get the address and everything out there so we all know. Because I'll share that shit like crazy motherfuckers. I can't stand maggots like that. Alright, sorry for the rant, guys. Have a great day. Again, thanks for the content. We really do appreciate it. Be safe, you guys. Seriously, everybody out there, be safe. This shit ain't nothing to sneeze about. It's always 420. Peace.
All right.
Jim the man. I love it. I love it. Yeah, screw the price gougers, by the way. I have to agree.
I forgot the other question, though.
He was asking what are the chances that Khabib versus Tony goes off and happens.
Yeah, I think we discussed that earlier. I don't see it going off. I want to watch that fight. I need to see that fight as bad as anyone, but I just don't see how the world's going to allow for that in 3 weeks.
Yeah, and the crazy part is, Fight Geek, if you had asked me this 24 hours ago, just 24, I would have said yes, it is happening. Now my answer is no, and that's all because we find out.
That's how fluid this situation is.
Well,
that's
it's also yeah.
That's why saying something 3 weeks from now is going to be dead set is just impossible in my opinion.
Okay, you're very right about that, but this was also because I found out that this secret underground layer was Florida. I thought that he was going to coming up with something creative.
Like, I thought the idea of going on a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean and having fights is cooler than Florida.
I mean, Florida's just—it's not going to work. I mean, I don't want to get.
I mean, if they can do a basketball game on a cruise ship or a military ship, why can't we have some fights on there?
Hey, yeah, exactly. So anyways, thank you so much, Jim. And then that is it for the audio questions. We've got one from Kairos, but he's in the he counts as a Twitter one because it's in Twitter. So we're going to move on to the Twitter questions now. I'm going to start off with a great one from our good friend Glitch. That's MMA Port. He says, #AskSplitPod. Is Kevin Lee still championship material, or is that a thing of the past since lightweight is now so stacked?
He still has the potential to be a champion. He's still young enough to become a champion. I just think there's a long way to go. I always use the reference of like a Robbie Lawler as a guy who had some mid-career stumbles, reinvented himself and came back to become a dominant champion in his 30s. So I definitely still think the potential is there for Kevin Lee. The alarming part is that he's just not showing improvements in the areas where he's weak. So he continues to miss weight and he continues to have a shoddy gas tank. Until we see those two things improve, it's hard to say he's a surefire champion someday, like a lot of people like to say, but he still possesses that potential, in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on the potential of Kevin Lee. I was actually, thinking about this, and I think that he has to make a true move to 170. 155 is not going to get any easier. He needs to take a lot of time off to rebuild his body properly for 170, and then he needs to fight a few easy opponents, because this guy is a star, but he needs to get his confidence back up. He needs a win. It's time.
Could you imagine him versus Colby with the difference in their gas tanks? I mean,
but that's exactly the. See, again, I didn't say throw him into the lion's den of top
three. Well, that's
three.
who he wants. That's who his team tells him he can compete against. Look who he's fighting.
He can't fight those people right now. He needs a break. It's all been killers. It's been straight killers.
Nico Price at 170. What do you think happens?
I think we see a really good fight.
I think
Nico's a friend of mine, so let's not be awkward about this. Nico's a friend of both of ours, but I think it'd be a great fight.
It would be a great fight, but I mean, we've seen Nico dig deeper than we've seen Kevin Lee, haven't we?
Yeah, no, I would probably favor Nico right now.
So, and Nico's a fringe. He's probably not, I don't even think he's ranked. So you're talking about giving him a winnable fight. What does a winnable fight look like? Do you think he can beat Vicente Luque?
Yeah, I think he potentially could. Again, he needs to take some time off.
That's a nice matchup for him.
What he needs, Fight Geek, is to take some time off, and he needs to rebuild his body for welterweight, which it's not right now.
And he's too muscular for 155.
Absolutely. And that's why his gas tank is getting blown because of all of that. I mean, right? I mean,
yeah, clearly, yeah.
So
well, that
yeah.
And he clearly hasn't adjusted his training, in my opinion.
Yeah, his striking honestly is still just missing something.
It's so stiff and simple, it's just not very advanced. At least it doesn't look that way. I was surprised to see how fluid Oliveira looked in contrast to a very stiff Kevin Lee.
He's also very hittable, right? He's always kind of standing in front of you like it's a boxing match.
Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, a lot of work needs to be done, but I love Kevin. I ain't giving up on Kevin, that's for sure. And I think that actually like a Vicente Luque, there you go. There's a fight. And yeah, it won't be easy. There are no easy fights in the UFC. We know that, but he can do it.
We'll see. All right, I got one queued up here from Jacob Powers.
Jacob Powers, what up? I love Jacob, guys. Give him a follow. That's at Jacob Powers too.
Okay, he says, from least favorite to favorite, how do you guys rank each weight class in the UFC? And this is going to be tough, but from least favorite, I would start with women's 145. Then I would go to women's 125.
Okay, this is off to a sexist start that I was afraid of.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
but you're right. You're right. Keep it going. Don't change it.
I'm gonna be
men's flyweight.
I would say men's heavyweight.
Oh, men's heavyweight.
In my opinion.
Okay. Men's flyweight.
Flyweight. Okay. Okay. Here's where it starts getting dicey.
I mean, if we're being honest right now,
I say men's middleweight.
Men's middleweight. Okay, see now.
Sorry. I'm gonna say.
I was gonna say women's bantamweight.
I'm gonna say actually men's light heavyweight is before heavyweight. So I would go women's 145, women's 125, men's 205, men's heavyweight,
men's flyweight,
men's middleweight,
women's bantamweight.
Women's bantamweight.
Which I have no problem bashing because women's bantamweight was awesome for a while.
That's not bashing. That's the middle of the pack at this point.
Well, by the way, women's bantamweight used to be unreal. It used to be so good. But
women's bantamweight, then I would go bantamweight, featherweight, 170, and lightweight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's actually a pretty accurate list.
So yeah, that's what I would say. To me, men's bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight, and 170. I mean, those four classes are basically, you can't go wrong. They're stacked all the way through.
I mean, middleweight is not bad. Middleweight is
shoddy. You got guys like Darren Till as potential title contenders on a one-fight winning streak.
Oh, relax about Darren Till. Okay.
You got Kelvin Gastelum, who's an oversized 170, are contending in that. I mean, Chris Weidman's in that class. Should I continue? It's not the Jared Cannonier's like the third-ranked guy in the class right now. Not the most impressive lineup in the UFC, in my opinion.
All right, when you put it like that, yes, it does sound a lot worse than men's bantamweight. Okay, fair enough. All right. Moving on to Eduardo. That's at Landacrew. He says, do you subscribe to the theory that a no-crowd, secret location UFC 249 card makes that Tony versus Khabib fight less exciting? #AskSplitPod. Love this question. Do you want to go first?
I do, and I do not think it makes it less exciting. I think those two squaring off and deciding who the best lightweight of all time is going to be incredibly exciting regardless. So no, I don't think it makes it less exciting at all.
I actually completely agree with you. I think that if anything, back in the days, this now feels like weeks and weeks ago when they were talking about having it at the Apex in Las Vegas, I thought that it was an almost fitting street fight type of feel. I thought it took nothing away from it.
And it'll give it like a note in history too. It's like, do you remember that fight was fought with no fans? Blah, blah, so it'll be historical that way.
Yep. Absolutely.
So before we move on, though, I forgot to mention our last question. Mm-hmm. The addendum, yes. So from our previous question from Jacob Powers, our least favorite to favorite classes, Mixta Doodoo asked, what weight class would each of you fall into if you're a fighter? My guess is Phil's a flyweight and the Geek's a welterweight. Do you want to go ahead and tell him your class?
No, you know what, Fight Geek? You always love to answer questions first. Why don't you go first? on what the truth is on this.
The truth on this?
Well, he said his guess is that I'm a flyweight and you're a welterweight. Why don't you go first?
He hasn't probably switched up, so I would say that I'm probably a featherweight naturally if I cut weight, and you're probably 170.
Yeah.
So
I would get very badly hurt because I can't cut further down much. I'm almost like a Kevin Lee type with the awkward. I'm like very awkwardly bodied. I should be a 65er. I'd be 170 and I would die. Yeah.
I'm kind of like I don't know, Cub Swanson size.
Yeah. 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 No, I remember that one time when we ironically the one time that we hung out for a few days and we did like the back-to-back thing, and I don't know, I thought I had a good story there, but now I don't remember.
Yeah, you're taller than me. Congratulations.
Oh, that's all I wanted to say. Okay, all right. Moving on. Paul O'Kelly. Paul O'Kelly's the man. He has been with us. He's one of the only guys I think who's been with us since like episode 1, literally, and I feel comfortable saying that. Paul, what's up? We've missed you. I'm so glad to hear from you. Guys, he's at SparksF1. Give him a follow. He's got a 3-part question, all related, so I'll just read it all at once, Fight Geek. He says, in relation to Dana's nonstop never say die attitude for UFC 249, 1, is he right to keep pushing for it? 2, is he sending the wrong message out to the public that business should go on when it shouldn't? 3, could this damage the UFC brand in the future? Stay safe, guys. Okay, go ahead, Fight Geek. Well, that's an excellent question that I can't wait to answer. So, we did obviously answer a lot of this in the beginning of the show. Is Dana right to keep pushing for UFC 249? Well, look, we're not experts. This is a very, very political question, which is why I'm so hesitant to answer it. It seems impossible to answer.
That's the reason I deflected to you.
It actually seems completely impossible not to answer it without being political. So this is my ultimate nightmare. It's kind of funny. I use MMA and MMA Twitter to escape from politics, but, to Paul's defense, this is a totally legitimate UFC question. So it's not like he's bringing in politics when they're not wanted. This is a totally relevant, fair question. Is he right to keep pushing for it? I have to pass, Paul. I don't know enough about the coronavirus, and I just don't know. Thank you so much, Paul. Wow, that was one of the toughest questions ever to get around with, but yeah, it's finally happened where politics has invaded MMA in an inescapable way. It is what it is. Okay, this question is from Vic the Dick at Victorious1612. Okay, boys, Emmy question is, what do you guys think of Tony's last 2 fights? I'm going to be honest and say that I thought he did not look that good. They were both doctor stoppages. Tony was in trouble in both those fights, and I felt like his jab wasn't quite there. He wasn't as good at finding his range as he had been prior to his knee injury. What are your thoughts on this? Is Tony past his prime? #AskSplitPod. And I loved this question because it kind of made me think, I never thought of it that way. But in many, in a large sense, he's got great points about those last 2 fights.
Well, absolutely. And going back to what we had talked about earlier, Tony is, 36, 37 years old. So he is a tad past his physical prime. So yeah, I mean, he certainly is probably on the backside of his prime. Is he still an elite fighter? Absolutely. Does he get hit? Yes. Has he always got hit? Yes. But I think the strength of Tony is his unpredictability and his resourcefulness and his toughness. So I don't necessarily think he's gotten hit a ton more than he used to. That's just my observation. Maybe he's lost a little bit of quickness with age in the injury, but not too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just push back. I would say that you guys are totally right to assume that this could be due to being past his prime. But, just remember how much trouble Tony was in that Edson Barboza fight or the Lando Venata fight, right? Those weren't recent, and Tony got out of those. So I will respectfully push back. I'll say, Vic, that I think that he's going to be, that Tony's just fine, that Tony is still in prime condition for fighting, and that he's going to, hopefully, I'm expecting the best Tony Ferguson when he does fight Khabib, whenever that may be. I don't think he's dropped his level. I think he just takes a lot of damage, honestly. So moving on, this is to our good friend, Fuck Yugi, that's at FUUCK Yugi said, what are your least favorite sports? I love that question. I'll start off because I know Fight Geek loves to start off most of the questions lately. With baseball. Do not like baseball at all. Can't stand it. Oh my gosh, so boring. Second least favorite, golf. Again, boring, and it's not a sport if you can be fat and just walk around. That's not a sport. Sorry.
No. Okay, well, I disagree with you on both of those. I'm going to go ahead and say my least favorite sport is any sport that starts with E. So any of the E sports, I don't believe.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of a
But I firmly am just
BS
not
answer
into
there.
E sports at all. I mean, I'm
Okay.
into video games. I'm just not into calling them sports.
What's your-
Second,
yeah.
probably is horse racing a sport? I'm not really into that.
Your answers are too safe. I need a dangerous
Too
answer.
safe. Well, I mean, I love
No one
sports.
likes horse racing.
I mean, don't shoot me, but hockey is pretty low on my list.
Oh my gosh, bro. We should just fight. We should just have a physical altercation. Wow.
You are from Chicago.
You love baseball and you love golf, but you don't like hockey. Got it.
I'm in Arizona, man. This is a baseball and a golf state.
Oh my gosh, bro. Okay. All right. I've heard enough. I've heard quite enough. Okay. All right. Moving on to question from Jokers LL. Love Jokers LL. Love this guy. Love how he's really done big things lately on MMA Twitter. Make sure you give him a follow, guys. That's at Jokers LL. He says, how much longer do you think Joe Rogan will be a commentator? I think he only signs one-year deals, only does pay-per-views, and only if they're in the U.S. It's obvious he's still passionate about it, but it's also obvious his passion has diminished. Go ahead, Fight Geek.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting older. He's been doing it a long time. I think you've even heard him on his podcast and kind of outside of the UFC even be somewhat critical of the UFC sometimes, or come across that way, in my opinion. So I would say...
Well, he's always been like that, though, right? That's what made
Well,
it...
I feel like he's a little more outspoken than he used to be. I think, he'll touch on Bellator. He'll talk about other promotions. He's not like strictly a company man the way he used to be, in my opinion. But I still see Joe being around in some capacity for a while, probably at least 5 more years.
Yeah, I think the short answer to the question, Jokers, is as long as Joe Rogan wants. Because let's remember how rich he is from the Joe Rogan experience. The truth is he can do whatever he wants. The UFC wants him there because his podcast has become as big as the sport almost. I mean, it's by far the most popular podcast in the entire world. By far. So, he certainly doesn't need the money to keep doing UFC. That's for sure. So it's as long as he wants. Fight Geek, you said that he's been more outspoken lately than he used to be. I hear what you're saying. I actually don't feel that way. I used to love Joe because I felt he was so outspoken. And then I'll never forget what was the turning point was UFC 232 when they moved it across state lines. And Joe completely threw softballs to Nowitzki during his interview, totally took Jones's side. And I said, oh, wow, he's a company man. I'm never listening to his show again. And I'm very proud I've never listened since.
Well, that makes you really unqualified to answer the question then.
Well, I just told you, as long as he wants. He's got too much money.
So your opinion is based on something that happened a few years ago?
Well, yeah, because you said that he's more outspoken now than he's ever been. I'm saying, no, he was outspoken. Now, if anything, he's been reined in.
Well, you just said you haven't listened to him in a few years, so how do you know how outspoken he is?
Since 232. Well, okay. All right. Okay. So this question is from Quinn. That's at Orthodox1993. He says, thoughts on a flyweight Grand Prix as soon as UFC comes back? They could make it a 10-man tournament. #AskSplitPod. What do you think?
As long as Moreno gets the title shot first.
Okay. So, see, that's interesting. So then would you make it Juicy Formiga versus excuse me.
Figueiredo,
guys.
Figueiredo versus Moreno.
Figueiredo versus Moreno, so then Joey B versus Formiga?
I'd have to look at the division and kind of see who's exactly deserving, but maybe.
Yeah, and honestly, Quinn, the one thing I'll say is I'm all for this Grand Prix, but, making it a 10-man tournament doesn't feel necessary, frankly. This is one of those rare cases where it's like, nah, just keep it at 8,
Or 4. Let's just see the top 4. I don't think there's 6 to 8 guys deserving of of that right now in that division. But there's clearly 4.
Okay, that I have no problem disagreeing with you on completely. I think make it 8. That's overly harsh. This is another sign, guys, that Fight Geeks
that'll
muted
take them
me.
2 years to do.
I made a flyweight Grand Prix and posted it, and we all know that obviously, of course, Fight Geek did not look at it. But I'll tell you what I have. I had Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2 as the first title fight.
I saw it. Do we have to
Moreno
go over your
versus Pantoja. Schnell versus Formiga.
Moreno
Astrov.
versus Pantoja, he just beat him.
He's got to do it again. It's a flyweight
Why?
Grand Prix.
That makes no sense.
Astrov versus Kara France at the end.
Horrible Moreno matchup.
Who would you have preferred? Who, if he's not getting the title? You just would have said title shot.
Well, I mean, who else is there for him to fight?
Well, I'm saying Benavidez 2 versus Figueiredo first because that's what Dana says is next.
Well, if we were doing a hypothetical tournament, then what Dana says is irrelevant.
All right. Okay. All right.
All right.
I was trying to
All
answer.
right, I got one queued up from Combat Sports with Rhino.
Combat Sports with Rhino. Rhino, what up? Guys, make sure that you
Says-
follow Rhino. He's a great guy, great podcast.
It says, "Sup, gents. Forever in boxing, we've had second and third generations go on to win titles. MMA is just getting old enough to have some second generation fighters breaking in. Do you think this will also be the case in MMA?" I don't think it will be the overwhelming case, but I think there are going to be cases. Specifically, I know Callum Bisping. I follow him quite a bit. Michael Bisping's son.
What about Callum Bisping? Yes.
I think he'll be probably a fighter someday.
Yes, but we know nothing about his potential. I mean, nothing.
Well, we know he's a good. He's a pretty good wrestler. He gets to train with his dad. He's going to be a tough guy and have every opportunity known to man to get into fighting.
Yeah. Isn't he in college right now? I would just think that why would he? Well, who knows? Why would you go to college now wouldn't you just do that later? I don't know.
You got someone? You got any opinion on it before you tear apart mine?
Yeah, my opinion is no. I don't think we're going to see much of that. At first I'm thinking, well, does Sergio Pettis count? Because that's Anthony Pettis' your little brother. But that doesn't count, right?
No, it's like second generation,
right.
So it would have to be like the children.
Right. That's what I thought. No, I really, really don't see that happening, and I look forward to being proven wrong. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think that it's just... Look, MMA is too competitive. It's too high a level at the UFC level, and I don't see it happening.
Fair enough. Let's keep it moving. We got more to cover. I got one from Juice Jackson. That's Aaron-ish Jackson. Make sure you guys give him a follow. He's the man. Juice, what up? He's got a great pod. He said, "What do you find most challenging about being on lockdown? #AskSplitPod." Go ahead. Probably not being able to go to the gym. I haven't been to the gym in a couple weeks, and it's becoming a problem.
Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, I can lift weights in the garage and stuff, but I really like going to my gym and having, everything I need.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'd say that is the number one, but, the truth is, for me, everything has been miserable. I mean, really, it's been miserable. So, guys, if you're struggling at all, my DMs are open. I've had a rough go of it. Fight Geek's married. I'm not married. At least you got that, Fight Geek. But it's been...
That I do.
Yeah, the gym is number one. Number two has been the fact that not just that the UFC isn't putting on events, but that the UFC isn't creating fights. So I have nothing to discuss on Twitter. It's all coronavirus. It's like a nightmare.
Exactly.
So yeah, so that's what's been tough there. But okay, moving on. Question from @Pat_Tobin. Pat Tobin, what up? He says, "Why is Tony versus Khabib fallen apart so many times when every sport in the world goes ahead? But now it looks likely at a time where every other sporting event is being canceled that this will go ahead. Are the gods of MMA just fucking with us? #AskSplitPod." Go ahead.
100%.
Right?
No doubt. No doubt. This is, MMA is the wackiest sport in the world, if you can even call it a sport. And this is just another instance of you couldn't script this.
Totally.
And it just builds the gravity of if they ever do get locked in that cage.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, next question from Dean R. That's at DeanDog3. Make sure you guys give Dean a follow. He's the man. He says, do you guys know if the gyms in other countries are shut down like they are here in the U.S. and what kind of impact that may have on American fighters not having a normal camp in place? Hashtag AskSplitPod. Dean, without going into too many details, yes, gyms are absolutely affected across the world in this global pandemic. So, fight camps, fight gyms all across the world have been ground to a halt. So that's going to be very much an effect on all fighters, American fighters and fighters from other countries as well. Okay, really, really quick. This is from Smokey J MMA. What's up, Smokey J? It says hashtag AskSplitPod. Bong toke, love it. Which UFC event will be the first to be graced with the presence of fans in the building after the pandemic has been controlled? And I think that's a great and really tough question, Fight Geek. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Off the top of my head, I wouldn't know. You're usually better with the UFC numbers, but let's say UFC 252. I don't know. When is that?
That's in July. That's a very optimistic answer, by the way.
Yeah, I think I'll go with UFC 252.
Okay.
Where's that located?
Well, it's supposed to be located in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Okay, let's say UFC 253 then.
Okay. I'm going to say UFC 255.
Ooh, that's an extended break. That'll be into almost 2021, won't it?
Well, 257 is the last one of 2020.
Okay, so that'd be in October.
Yeah, I think October. I think, and I think, by the way, I really hate to say it, I think it could be Ferguson, right? Yeah. So.
Buzzkill.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so moving on. Almost done with the questions. Got one more, I think, from our good friend Cyrus King. Love Cyrus. Follow Cyrus, the man, at Cyrus King. He says, if UFC 249 does happen with the full card, I liked Rose to defeat Jessica Andrade, but Rose has been up and down mentally. If she does go forward with this fight, do you think that the Corona madness benefits Jessica? And if I could just answer that first
Unbelievable question.
I think it's a great question. Amazing question. And my first thought, Fight Geek, is, yeah, absolutely it will.
100%. I think we've seen with Rose, with all due respect, she hasn't always handled adversity all that well. I mean, she's a unique individual, but there's a lot of adversity, and this would be adverse situation. So I could see that potentially affecting her for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so, oh my gosh, I almost forgot Kairos's question. Give me a quick second here to bring it up, but Kairos, love your questions. They're just different format from the other audio ones, so that's why it always gives me a second here. But Fight Geek, again, we just want to tell the fans or tell the listeners, everyone, that we're going to be back. We're going to be here weekly, getting through this, guys. I know it sucks. As you can tell, myself and Fight Geek are both already a little out of it, a little cabin fever going on. Little irritated, exactly. But we're going to be getting through this with all you guys anyway, despite the cabin fever crankiness. So with that, I am going to very quickly play Kairos' question. Wow, Kairos, I really like you, bro, because this is taking a long time. Was there anything else you wanted to quickly touch on, Fight Geek? Okay, all right. I've got Kairos's question.
Ranked in the top 15 at welterweight.
Well, here we go.
Fellas, a few weeks ago I told you about Santiago Ponzinibbio, and y'all said he has no wins over people ranked in the top 15 at welterweight. Well, he beat Neil Magny, who had a very impressive return to 170, who was ranked, mind you, before he got suspended by USADA. So I ask you again, do you acknowledge the ability of Santiago Ponzinibbio before it's too late? And if so, who would you like to see him face next? Me personally, I think he should fight Jeff Neal. That fight, whoever wins that fight, is the most violent person at 170. Period, point blank.
Love it. Fight Geek, your response.
Agreed. I like it. Nobody was ever hating on
Well, I was. No, I'll take.
I
was
wasn't.
hating.
I was just stating a fact. At that point, he didn't have a win, and I don't know where Neil Magny's ranked. That was a very impressive Neil Magny performance, but I don't think that's any championship quality barometer to rate Santiago Ponzinibbio against. Guy hasn't fought in, I think, 16 months now. His biggest win is Neil Magny. Doesn't exactly make him a world beater, but he does have a profile. I think he's 27-3, active fighter, or an action fighter, not active, hasn't fought in forever. So I think it's just a case of getting in front of us, performing, and getting back on the horse. He's had an extended layoff. He's been laid off so long that his most impressive wins have turned unimpressive. Thank God Neil Magny came back and reminded us how good he was by performing that way. So I don't think it says a whole lot just quite yet. But, yeah, Jeff Neal versus Ponzinibbio, sign me up.
Yeah, my first answer to you, Kairos, is that I do not recognize that Santiago Ponzinibbio is still alive. I hope he is, and I wish him all the health in the world, but I need to see some proof of life, okay? This guy fell off the face of the earth. I've never seen anything like it. I don't believe that he's even... Was he all a figment of our imagination? Was Santiago Ponzinibbio even real? Come on. What are we talking about here, Kairos? What are we talking about here? This guy ain't even real. I think he was a figment of our imagination.
He beat Gunnar Nelson 3 years ago.
Well, I'm trying to think of a funny Gunnar Nelson joke, but I'm too tired.
Is Gunnar Nelson even on the roster anymore? He doesn't fight either.
Who cares? Gunnar Nelson sucks.
No, Gunnar Nelson's good, but...
Well, he did almost TKO Leon Edwards at the end of their fight 2 fights ago, but I digress.
All right. Does that do it for us this week?
That is it for this week. Fight Geek, take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil, the MMA dude. We are at Split_podcast. It's 4 words. The Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.